Good evening, and thank you for joining us on this Friday night. We begin tonight with breaking news. The Supreme Court just issued a decision that will allow access to the common abortion drug mifepristone while the legal process continues. The justices essentially granted emergency requests from the Biden administration and the drugs maker after a U.S. District Court judge had revoked the FDA's 23-year-old approval of the drug. Mifepristone is a medication that has been used by millions of American women since it was approved in 2000. It's approved for use through 10 weeks of pregnancy and is commonly prescribed to treat miscarriages. More than half of all abortions in the United States use medication. And this is the first major action by the nation's highest court related to abortion rights since it overturned Roe v. Wade last summer. CBS's chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford has read the order. And Jan, what have you learned?
Well, Norah, it was a brief, unsigned order the court issued today that blocks those lower court rulings, which means the pill will be available now nationwide through the next few months while these appeals kind of play out. 2 of the 9 justices, conservative justices, Justice Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas dissented here, but there were no other noted dissents. Obviously, I think this was the expected outcome. There are conservative legal principles at the heart of this case that suggested this court was not going to allow a lower court judge to ban a drug that the FDA approved more than 2 decades ago. But in the meantime, for that fear, states had already been stockpiling drugs, worried that the court might take a different course, Norah.
So what happens next as the legal process plays out?
There'll be hearings in the appeals courts, which is in New Orleans, that will start next month. They will now tackle the merits of this case and whether or not the arguments that are being put forth by a conservative legal group hold any water. Whatever happens in that case, whether they lose or whether the Biden administration loses, either side is now going to go right back to the Supreme Court with an appeal. So it's going to be right back up here probably sometime this fall. The court will then have to take another look and decide if it will get involved and decide the case on the merits, Norah.
And let me ask you, Jan, the court had essentially asked or imposed on itself a delay until tonight. Does that suggest there was some internal dissent?
Yes, and I think we saw that when we got the opinion, the dissent that was written by Justice Alito. If it had just been that brief unsigned order with no dissents, they could have handed that down yesterday. But obviously there was writing in this case, and that's what sometimes causes a longer delay when the justices have to kind of weigh and go back and forth on how they're going to handle it. In this dissent, Justice Alito said he thought the stay was unnecessary. He would have kept in place what an appeals court had done with just some restrictions on the use of this drug, Norah.
All right, we'll continue to watch it very closely. Jan Crawford, thank you very much.